In this video, we're going to create a new UI feature to allow a user to log out. So you'll see up in the sticky nav here that we have a sign in and register link, and our strategy is going to be to remove those two links from the page and instead replace them with a logout link conditional on the user being logged in. So coming over to the sticky nav component now, you'll see that those two links are in the template right here inside this div. And what we're going to do is put another div above that one, and we're going to add a vif to this, and we're going to then call the check method of the global auth API. Now, if we don't pass any arguments into this check method, it's going to simply check if the user is authenticated or not. It doesn't matter whether they're an admin or any other kind of role. So we'll also need to add a velse to the sibling div there. Now, in this first div, let's firstly display the authenticated user's name. So we're going to put hi, and then we're going to put a text interpolation, and then inside that we're going to go auth user, and that's going to retrieve the user object, and then we can grab a property off that object, which will be the name, like that. Coming over to the browser now, once that code is rebuilt, you should see the logged in user's name in the navbar, assuming that you're logged in. Let's now add a logout link. So back in the sticky nav component, what we're going to do is I'll first put an exclamation point after the name, and then I'm going to open an anchor tag, and I'm going to give this an ID of logout, and I'm also going to give it a blank href value. Next, I want to add some classes. So these are going to be Vuetify classes that we can use for styling this link. So the first one is going to be blue-gray _text, and the next one will be text _darken 4. Finally, I'm going to add an event handler by going @click, and we'll use the prevent modifier, and we're going to call a method logout. So this is going to allow us to hijack the click event of this anchor. Finally, I'm going to put the text logout as a child of that link. So VueAuth has an inbuilt logout function, as you'd expect. So we just need to configure that correctly before we use it. So coming over to the VueAuth config, let's now add a new property, and this one is going to be logout data. We'll assign an object to that, and we're going to give this a property URL, and now we can assign the URL of our logout endpoint on our API, which is users logout. Now for this one, we're also going to need to specify the HTTP verb, which we didn't have to do on the login and register links because that was already set correctly. So I'll go method get. Let's also add a redirect property, and we're going to set that to the home page like we did for the login and logout. For the login and the register. And we're going to add one extra property as well, and this one is make request, and we're going to set that to true. Now this is to ensure that an API request is made during the logout process, as the default behavior is actually just to delete the token locally and not to do it on the API. So now we're properly displaying the logout link, and the logout method is configured correctly with VueAuth. So the last thing to do is to define the click handling method in the sticky nav component. So let's add a methods property to our component config, and the name of this method is logout with a capital O, like that. All right, so the first thing that we want to do when we log out is actually to empty the shopping cart, since we don't want any cart items to persist once the user's been logged out. So to do this, we're going to need to import the item model. So we'll come up to the top and we'll go import item from store models item. And then we're going to call the update method of the item model. And we're first going to give this a where clause. And we're going to assign a function to that. And this function is simply going to return true. So the idea here is that we want to update every item model instance. Next, we're going to give it a data property. And we're going to give it a value of cart. And we're going to set that to 0. So this means it's going to iterate through all the item model instances and set all of their cart values to 0, which will have the effect of emptying the cart. With that done, we can complete this method by calling this auth logout like that. So once those changes to the code have compiled, come over to the browser, and what you want to do is make sure you're logged in. You should now see that logout link there. But let's go ahead and add an item to the cart. Let's just add 2 for good measure. And what we'd expect to see now when we log out is, firstly, that the sign in and register link are now shown. Secondly, that the cart is now appears to be empty. Checking DevTools, you'll see that we have a user's logout request, and it has a 200 status, which is good. And if we now go over to our local storage, you'll see that there's no auth token there, which is likely from the fact that ViewAuth has now deleted that from local storage.